Hello and welcome to Pop Gaze. I'm Boz.
And I'm Tyler.
Listen as we gaze within popular film and television that matters to us.
This is our canon. In our first season, we're gazing back into Disney Channel original movies.
Listen as I ask if Eddie is striking out or coming out.
And I wax poetic on the erotic imagery of hot dog condiments and desperately wish for a different protagonist.
This is Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off. Yeah, and our first one is Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off. It came out in 2003. And a little synopsis. Eddie Ogden is a 14-year-old teenager at Cedar Valley High School playing baseball for the Groundhogs, coached by his father. His father wants Eddie to win a scholarship for his baseball skills. That was not present in the movie. I didn't pick that up at all. Wait, isn't he like in the 8th grade? Are we already talking about scholarships?
Well, okay, you know, prestigious high schools.
That's true. That's
culinary
true.
institutes are always something to be thinking about.
Right. True. Oh, wait, I actually think he's in high school.
No, he's not.
Oh my god.
Is he?
Okay, well... okay, wait. Oh,
there was no presence of anyone older than them.
Oh my god. Okay, so we're... I'm a dumbass, because I literally just read a 14-year-old teenager at Cedar Valley High School.
What the hell? He's at a high school?
Okay. That literally was
That's impossible. That is impossible.
That's literally impossible.
There was no one older than them there.
There was literally no one older.
Do you think they have like separate campuses for the freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors? Because
maybe like different buildings or something.
Dream.
Gotcha. That's what I wanted.
Love
that. His father wants Eddie to win a scholarship for baseball for his baseball skills. Eddie likes baseball, but in his spare time he watches the Food Network, specifically Bobby Flay. Eddie enjoys cooking for him and his friends. When the time comes to sign up for electives, Eddie's friends want to sign up for computer science. Eddie wants to join the class as well until he sees the home economics classroom. Eddie tricks his friends DB and Frankie into signing it, so they all end up in home economics together. And okay, so this is just going to like give you the full
how about this?
So yeah,
I'm going to read the IMDb synopsis. It's perfect. Quite brief. But here we go. Eddie loves baseball. His dad's the coach. His best friends are his teammates. But will he strike out with them all if he trades his glove for an oven mitt?
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah, to the point.
So shocking. To the
concise.
Point,
okay, there's also a cook-off in all this, and
right, we should.
While the prize is not $1 million, I believe the prize amounts in scholarships that are distributed among the winners, which I didn't understand because there was only one winner. Spoiler. It's also not Eddie. Double spoiler. So who knows if it's $1 million? The weird, crazy, zany home ec teacher said that it was scholarships. I don't know how much Little Miss Bridget, who is Eddie's rival, would receive. But yeah, there's a cook-off, and that's the movie.
Shocking. So shocking. I actually like haven't considered that until now, that the $1 million, it's like literally in the title, but I don't know.
Right.
It's never like fully kind of given like enough space. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't equal a dollar amount, but emotional amount.
Emotional.
Yeah.
Wow. And there.
Yes.
And also apparently the tag. Oh wow. This is wild.
What's the tag?
Winning never tasted so.
It didn't. Because, well, first of all, he didn't win. So, who knows what it tastes like?
Yeah. Wait, and I'm like just now like registering like the kind of poster art. It's him and like the baseball in a large spatula.
Looking at it now, it's fantastic.
It's so shocking.
One of the many choice graphic design moves that this film makes, because the text right off the bat is stunning. It's
absolutely
fat. It's impactful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it just makes me think of food and queerness.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely be getting into that. And I think that's definitely the thing that Tyler and I are going to kind of bring this movie back to, is that it is incredibly gay themed.
Yes.
And there's lots here that I think Disney knew that they were doing, but of course coded it in this like other kind of narrative about like athleticism versus whatever.
Creativity, I guess?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Versus creativity and like self-expression. Yeah.
So what were your, like, okay, so this movie came out in 2003. How old were you?
Right. So, math. It's 2003. Ooh, okay, wait. So you're good at math.
How old are you now?
This is my 21st year of living.
Okay, so... Oh, God. Okay.
So 1997 was my birth.
15, 16, 17, 18, 15. Oh, my God. You were 6 or 7.
Holy shit. Okay, yeah. Okay, 6 or 7.
So wait, did you see this movie when it was first, like, in the rounds?
I did. And if not, then, like, at least, like a year or two after. Because it's definitely in circulation. I'm trying to remember the kind of... So 6 or 7, so I was living in Tracy for sure, and what is that? So that's kindergarten going into first grade, I think, was where I was at, which is interesting because that was also a time for me where I was like, thoughts were occurring, and
what kind of thoughts?
Like, yeah, definitely like already kind of like feeling. Kind of like getting into this like space of like compulsory like heteronormativity. So like already kind of like thinking that I should be flirting with girls and things like that. And so I like.
Did it feel wrong?
Yeah, I think it definitely felt like.
So right off the bat, felt wrong.
Yeah,
the bat.
Yeah. But no, yeah. So I remember this movie always sitting with me, and of course didn't know why until much later. Like this movie amongst all of the other movies that kind of came out in this era, this movie was the one that I've always kind of like, it's always haunted me, I guess.
Really?
And so rewatching it, I now understand why, I guess, maybe. I'm not sure how much it kind of like spoke to me or something at the moment, but I think like its ideas and like what it's kind of talking about and like this kind of complex that Eddie has, I think was something that I was like probably super interested in at the time, navigating sexuality and things like that. But yeah, so 2003, where are you at this moment in history?
Well, I'm a little confused because I was actually 14 or 15 in 2003, but I swear I saw this when I was still in middle school.
Interesting.
And I mean, I guess if Eddie's in high school, then so am I, because we were actually the exact same age when this came out.
Yeah.
So I also identified with the movie. I definitely remember that. I also remember having a huge, big old boner for Eddie. And this was a time in which I was starting to understand that I was attracted to like masculine presentation, like that kind of whole shebang.
Right.
So I definitely was in sports all throughout my young adult life and young life, and wanted to be or was a creative soul, but I didn't really express that through any kind of visual medium. It was mostly just writing, and every now and then I'd pick up a camera and take a picture of a Christmas light, you know?
Right.
So, as one does.
Right.
And so I definitely related to this kind of internal struggle Eddie had in terms of balancing some kind of being what your parents idealize you as to what you're actually passionate about. So definitely connected with that. I felt like Eddie was a big old gay person. And before, I mean, I definitely knew what gay was. I wasn't necessarily like identifying myself as that, but I knew what it was. I also grew up in like a pretty Catholic environment, went to Catholic high school, so it wasn't necessarily celebrated. So that aspect of hiding in because the way cooking is treated in this movie is like they might as well just say, you queer, you big old queer in the kitchen.
Right.
Like the way that his friends react, the way his dad reacts is all super, super reflective of a young person trying to navigate the world as a queer person with very kind of stifling environments. And so I don't know, I remember really loving this. I remember kind of wishing I had the kind of acceptance and love that his father shows him at the end.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, and I think that says something about like Disney Channel's kind of agenda that I think we're definitely picking up on here, because I have your relationship with this movie, or like maybe the ideas or like similarities or parallels that like you found in the movie and like in your life at the moment of like its like release is like my relationship with High School Musical, which came out like much later, or at least like 3 years later, and like the kind of trilogy itself came out like, you know, finished like 6 years later. And Troy, we'll also of course have an entire episode or several dedicated to High School Musical, so it's going to be so shocking. Yeah, and so I think that Disney Channel is definitely interested in this kind of narrative of like and it's not just with like boys or kind of like, you know, masked people. It definitely is kind of positioned within different kind of like spaces that aren't just like this athlete jock that like wants to also do this other thing that has to do with like creativity and is of course like associated for some reason with like femininity. So yeah, so I'm interested in like how Disney Channel kept doing this. It did it for you and then did it for me much later on. So we'll of course kind of unpack that and look at that. Hopefully by the end of this podcast, we'll kind of collect our thoughts and pick up on a pattern, which is definitely there. I guess we can probably like go through like the kind of like our favorite quotes or something, or maybe like moments.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, how about this? How about we start off with the dad?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about the dad.
Yeah.
He is the coach of Eddie's baseball team. He is extremely dickish. He's a big old asshole. He has very static views on gender. Even though he coaches a co-ed baseball team. And one thing that he constantly kind of uses as an insult is comparing any of the players' abilities to that of femme. So throwing like a girl, running like a girl is bad. Girl is very bad.
Right.
Do you have any choice quotes from Eddie's father? Does Eddie's father have a name?
Oh my God, good question. What is Eddie's dad's name?
Is it Bill? It seems like a Bill.
Probably like a
Ogden.
Singular.
We're going here. Oh, his name is Hank.
Hank Ogden. Shocking.
Hank.
The one we kind of talked about before we started recording was the moment where Eddie comes. There's like a game that finishes, and not only are we kind of introduced to Eddie's kind of passion for cooking with the introduction of the Eddie dog after the baseball game,
which is just condiments on a hot dog.
It's just like an absurd amount of like relish and like ketchup and mustard. It's like nothing particularly.
The way it's filmed is like a composer hearing music for the first time, a sculptor grazing his finger over an unsculpted slab of marble.
Right. Yeah.
Things are flying in the air. Relish
Slow-mo.
is spilling over the sides of this hot dog cart.
It's so alarming.
It is fucking sexual as hell.
It's so sexual.
Yeah. Just think about that Eddie dog.
The Eddie dog. I'm wondering about the there's lots of things that we kind of picked up on in this movie. One of them being the egg, which we can maybe talk about for a little bit. But I'm wondering if the hot dog. I'm also curious about that, like the history of the hot dog and its like association with like the baseball game or whatever. Like, why not? Because I also think about like garlic fries and like nachos or something.
I always think hot dogs, never think nachos.
Okay, interesting. Okay, okay.
Well, I'm just anti that nacho cheese. It just doesn't.
It doesn't work
appeal to me on any kind of level, especially a visual one. But no, I mean, like beyond the obvious phallus, I don't know why people love sticking them in their mouth at baseball games.
Particularly at baseball games.
I can only assume there's something. It's something that's hot. It's meat.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So do you like hot dogs?
I love hot dogs.
Oh my God,
I haven't had
me
a hot
too.
dog in a really long time. Yeah. No.
What are your condiments of choice?
If I'm having so much fun and if I'm also like speaking to no one after or like sitting next to someone that like I'm not really talking to or whatever.
Just a silent baseball game?
Yeah. preferred experience.
Right.
It's just I love to go all out. So like chopped like yellow onions. Definitely some like relish and like ketchup and mustard for sure. Yeah, I also love like Polish dogs as well.
Ooh,
so like that's
course.
Like that, but like also with like bell peppers and everything. But yeah, that's those are so good.
Yeah.
Those are so good.
Yeah, I lived in Chicago for 5 years, and the only thing about that I miss are Chicago dogs. They're fucking fantastic.
Yeah, I heard those are iconic.
Everything. And things that you wouldn't even consider, like tomato slices.
Shocking.
Slices of tomato just peeking out of the bun. And it's great.
That sounds horror.
Oh, well... Listen, I love a tomato, so it's all good for me. Love a pepper. Those are on there. Pepper. Okay, but I mean, the dogs are there. The dogs are what kind of pushes Eddie, or like reveals Eddie's kind of creativity and pushes him into this creativity, which I thought, I think this is a fine film, first of all. And I thought the moment where he was like sharing that with his friends, and his friends were just fucking digging the fuck out of those dogs, and like his closeted little shorty queer friend like loved it. Everyone loved it. So like Eddie like enjoying and like the practice of creating and sharing that creation with others like is a really cute moment. And kind of propels him into his little cooking journey. So I thought that was cute. I don't know.
Yeah. Absolutely. I know for sure. So that's our introduction to this kind of like, and also we should say something about the editing as well, that this is like a reoccurring thing.
Oh my God.
Like
Fast and Furious.
The way that scene is edited, and that kind of like style of editing, and like the way that the movie chooses to edit scenes where cooking is involved, is very interesting and like incredibly like romantic, also very sexual, and so there's that definitely like reappears for sure in other scenes that we can get into. But after that scene of like the Eddie dog, so we're kind of introduced to this kind of like, what's the word? It's like a passion that's like surfacing, or that's always been there, or whatever, right? We come home with Eddie and his friends after the baseball game, and his parents bring home like all of these like groceries, I believe. So it's like this like just these like raw, like uncooked like chicken wings, like a series of like greens and things like that. And as the mom is like starting to prep like a meal, she ends up like cutting like her finger, and so the dad ends up cutting his finger, and so they end up like going to the hospital or something.
Right. Uncalled for. Quite uncalled for. Definitely a Band-Aid could have been fine.
Exactly.
Also, the entire family goes to the hospital with him.
The entire family,
because Eddie has two older brothers. Are there two?
Who are like. Yeah, there's two. They're like not twins, but they're both like the same age.
Right. Couldn't figure them out. One really seemed to disappear throughout half the film because
they ebb in and out of like presence for sure.
And they are also contributors to the whole cooking is queer
absolutely
kind of plot thread.
Right. And so they leave all at once, and like one of the friends, one of Eddie's friends, the one that over the course of the film becomes very anti-cooking and Eddie wanting to cook and being a chef or something, says like, no, they're gone, so now we can watch the game. And so they go inside and they turn on the TV, and I think it like accidentally switches to like the cooking channel, and it's like this, of course, again, very slow-mo, very sexual scene where it's like this person like cracking an egg over like this like glass bowl, and then it's like Eddie kind of like in like moment of like, you know, the world is silent and like it's just him and this like realization that like that this is like a passion that like he might want to pursue and ends up pursuing, and so that happens, and then we kind of get to the cooking scene where he like starts just like digging through all the groceries that like his mom brought, and he makes this like absurd concoction that's like fried chicken that's like covered in like Fruit Loops and like a mashed potato volcano that has like chocolate syrup.
Was it chocolate? It looked purple.
Was it purple? Oh, I mean, it was. I think it was. What was it?
I thought it was like
gravy.
I thought it was like a jam compote. Like I had no. It was otherworldly. Like it was the most inedible looking
meal ever.
Yeah, and they come home, dad's okay, they sit down to dinner, they're looking at it like, oh, what the fuck? And then of course, like, wipe, they are all loving it, there is nothing left, people are fighting over the last chicken leg, and I'm shocked because there's no fucking way that tasted good.
There's no way.
I mean, I understand this whole, like, kids in the kitchen making something crazy, and Eddie's, like, this, like, unbridled talent, and they all love it, but you have to also consider the enjoyment of food is also based on visual presentation. So unless they all, like, scarfed it down while blindfolded, there is no fucking way they enjoyed it as much as they did.
Right. It was alarming. The only thing that I would consider trying is the kind of... Actually, I don't know, because the way that he cooked it with like the fried chicken wings with the Fruit Loops, like it wasn't like he added the Fruit Loops afterwards. Like he had like the batter, like the kind of like the batter that like that he dipped in with like the chicken wing, and then after that he immediately rolled it in like a kind of like bed of Fruit Loops, and that's shocking.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I would be down to try the Fruit Loops after, like with it, maybe like on the side or something. Like
I see what you're saying.
But like his approach was just gnarly.
Well, let's get back to that batter, because Eddie decided to tackle this by taking out every single egg in the carton and holding them in his arm, and then tried to crack one, mistakenly cracks it, like does like a really amateur job, the shell falls in. And this becomes like a recurring thread where he can't crack an egg, but he's a genius. I guess that's some kind of thing. You need to have the technique. You can't really just be this kind of unbridled creativity, and you have to learn how to crack an egg. But there are so many eggs in this film and this is the first appearance of the eggs. And what did you get from the eggs? Like, are eggs just like this kind of like, we're cooking and like there's so many and we're just overflowing with eggs. And this is also Eddie's downfall in that he can't properly crack an egg. So what's up with these eggs? What do you think?
That's a good point. Yeah, because it is a thing that is also like it is a kind of like it is like the only dialogue that Eddie ends up having with Bobby Flay at the end of the film, or it is the kind of like the finishing kind of line is like Eddie asks Bobby Flay, "Can you teach me how to crack an egg?" And Bobby Flay says, "If you stick around, I'll teach you." And in this moment was in a kind of where Eddie was kind of witnessing and looking at the kind of the competition space for the cook-off, but also of course again met with this like High School Musical kind of circumstance where like the game also fell on the same time and day as the cook-off. And so so that's why he was saying if you stick around, because Eddie was going to leave or was planning to not stay. But so I'm interested in, because not only was it like a reoccurring ingredient, and in most cases was an unnecessary ingredient, because like there was times where they were like making a salad or learning how to like mince like a fucking like I don't know what, like carrots, and there was just like eggs present just like always. Yeah, so I'm interested in, I think, like the amount of eggs, and then it kind of leading up to like this moment of dialogue between him and Bobby Flay, like this person that like he's like idolizing and like is his kind of weird, that kind of like distant kind of like mentor that you have or something. And so I'm like wondering, I don't know, like I'm trying to like think about like the kind of the queerness in that. And like that moment that like he got to share of something, or of like Bobby Flay like being the teacher in a lot of ways, and like Bobby Flay being the introduction to like letting Eddie know that this is like a possible like thing to do, like this is a passion that can be pursued and like can be like, I don't know, it's like accepted or something or whatever. So I'm thinking that there's like definitely like some, of course, like gay themes in that, of like looking and seeing like this kind of like growing up and seeing maybe like a gay family member, or like watching Brokeback Mountain, or I don't know, something where like you are witnessing your experience in another body, and knowing that, and like thinking that this is like a possible way of like being, that like this is like a possibility model or something. And so I think I don't know what the egg is doing, but I think the egg is doing is maybe just that was this kind of like the egg as something that he couldn't crack that he couldn't figure out, like his sexuality being something that like he doesn't know and like have like the language or the kind of technique or whatever to navigate. And then maybe Bobby Flay, of course, like saying the whole like, if you stick around, I can teach you. I don't know. So I'm thinking about like gay mentors and like, you know, like who teaches you and like who introduces you to like who you are, I guess. Maybe?
Call me by your name, rears its ugly head again. Yeah, no, I think that's incredibly valid. I think I went like a very basic kind of route to it with eggs as femininity and femininity in the kitchen as this like kind of like, I mean, it seems like Eddie's like both like discovering his creativity and like we think his queerness, but it also seems like there's this kind of anti-femme thread throughout the film where cooking is equated with femininity. And Eddie keeps cracking these eggs, keeps cracking them, and fucks them up. And he can't, like, kind of accept his own... Like, if we're going to equate cooking with femme as, like, kind of this, like, cultural thing, Eddie can't really accept that part of himself fully. He can't really embrace that because he has to kind of go back and forth between these modes of being, like, the star player. And let's get this straight. Eddie is the... fucking best player on that team. He is the best player in all of Georgia. He
literally
he can do anything he wants. He is a golden god. But he can't fucking crack an egg. He can't embrace his femininity. He can't accept it even, and he kind of disdains it. Like there's a point where he's talking with his zany home ec teacher. He's like, "Why do I need to learn how to crack an egg?" And he kind of just doesn't have any time for it. It's just something that's there and that he has to kind of like break through and not really like pay attention to it. So I thought like him asking Bobby Flay was this whole kind of like, hey, I really do want to embrace this kind of side of myself. I really do want to learn about it, because when he is going through that cook-off arena and just looking at it with a wide-eyed wonder, he was like, fuck it. Like, if I get to experience this glory, I think I need to embrace all sides of myself in order to, like, succeed. So, like, I mean, I'm going very baseline with it because I'm just, like, equating the Eddie dog with a phallus that he sticks in his mouth. So I'm just going to say eggs are femininity in this film.
I think so. No, I think that's, like, fair. For sure.
Let's talk about the women. Can we talk about the women for a second in the movie?
Wow. Yeah. So, the mom, of course, that was like, I think, like the strongest kind of relationship, or at least one of the kind of more prominent ones. At least the one that he, I think, probably felt most safe with. Maybe?
Oh, well, I honestly thought he felt safe with all the women, because all the women are the ones that are supporting his cooking. I mean,
absolutely.
We've got the mom who walks in on him cooking. Well, she finds the cook-off slip that Eddie took from the home ec teacher. And the home ec teacher is just a wonderful presence of a second mother. She's also supportive of his talents. He has... his friend on the baseball team, who's a bit of like a, I guess for lack of a better word, a tomboy. She's pretending to be a cheerleader to please her mother, but she really loves baseball and she's pretty good at it. And then we also have Bridget, who is in his home ec class, who is just a fucking fierce ass cook queen. She will take no shit. She only has time for cooking. All she thinks about is cooking. Home ec is she's majoring in home ec. There is nothing left for Bridget but cooking. And she's even supportive of Eddie. I mean, she views him as a rival, obviously, but she's supportive of it. She trains with him. All the women are pretty supportive of Eddie, like in all capacities, which is also somewhat kind of troubling. All these women kind of like bolstering this kind of like wild talent of a man. I don't know. It was interesting.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think... they think with like the mother and the kind of cooking and like there were so many scenes, of course, that we picked up on that obviously could be that parallel like maybe like your mom maybe like accidentally like reading your diary or like being walked in on or something.
Yeah,
like
searching your internet porn history. Like
absolutely. So like that moment where that is where I think this is probably like most strong, this kind of these like really like I don't want to say underlying like gay themes is this moment where I think like she sees the slip, or she like already like saw the kind of certificate that came in the mail, or no, I'm sorry, she sees the pamphlet that says like the cook-off, like submit like your recipe or something like that, and so she asks him about his interest in it, and it's like this really intense conversation where like he is terrified that like she is now aware that like this is something that he's interested in, not in fear of her opinion, but in fear that the dad will find out and like what that opinion would be, and like what that response would be. And it's this like moment that is like incredibly just like this, you know, the kid coming out to the mom, and you know this they literally exchange dialogue that is like, don't tell dad, he'll never understand, and then she's like, I think he'll understand, and then they kind of look at each other, and then they're like, oh yeah, maybe he won't,
right.
And so it's definitely like this like really, it's like this moment and this kind of like back and forth that really kind of solidifies our theory, but like our kind of interpretation of this film and like what this film is like.
I mean,
doing.
It's baseline fact at this point. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Let's fuck it with the theory. This is
queer.
Yeah.
This is queer. This is a queer film. Yeah, and so I think his relationship with women in this movie is definitely something to be looked at for sure. But like with the dad in particular, this quote after, I mean, there's like 1,000 quotes from him. It's so shocking. This quote after he cooks that first meal with the fried chicken and the Fruit Loops, where the dad goes, this does make sense. He used to play with Play-Doh, like cooking, like he used to act like he was cooking with his Play-Doh as a kid, which is interesting because we were talking, like when we watched this together, a lot about just like this whole thing that is like using like, or like trying to find examples of like sexuality and like queerness at like a very young age or something like that. But of course, like the dad's agenda is he's not actually interested in like supporting that statement did not come out of like a excitement or kind of enthusiasm about Eddie cooking, because that immediately was followed up by the dad and like the brothers making fun of him, calling him like Eddie Crocker and things like that.
Which was brilliant.
Which was an amazing pun.
Timely, very timely.
Timely and timeless. But
yeah. Can we talk about the way cooking is treated in this film for a second by the men?
Absolutely.
Because I honestly am just fucking blown away by it. Because also, let's keep in mind, the way Eddie kind of opens up his love of cooking and his experimentation with cooking is seeing a man on TV cooking. So we're at a point in culture where men cooking is not really that big of a fucking deal, and we're also past the point where man cooking is like kind of past this like a chef ideal. So like a person in a high-end restaurant, like that being like a purely like male kind of position, and someone in the kitchen being like a purely female kitchen, a purely female role. So we're at this point in culture where like men can cook, women can cook, and it can be in the kitchen. It doesn't have to be like relegated to like the fucking barbecue or a high-end restaurant. But the way that cooking is treated in this movie by every fucking man is like food is a disease. It is something that is contracted, and you have a case of the queers if you like to do it. So I don't quite understand. Like, this is why I can only view it in a queer context, is by the way that men treat cooking. Because there's no kind of way in 2003 that anyone would look at someone who wants to cook and just be disgusted by it. Right. Because also this is a time when like the kind of creativity economy is really starting to boom, like where anything that you can do that is creative is viewed as like a skill set that separates you from the rest of your peers. So and even in Georgia, like the South, I never lived in the South, so I don't really have any kind of like context for how queerness is treated there. But I'm pretty sure they like their food in the South. I think
it's safe to.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common practice there, where I'm sure a lot of men cook. So what was your read on the way that cooking is treated? Because, and also Eddie's friend DB, who is just clear cut, like kind of oh god, self-hating, like, homophobe. But in this case, foodophobe, cookingphobe, stovophobe, who knows? But he is just, like, the one who's most violently against Eddie cooking in addition to the dad.
Right.
And it can, like, there is no other way that this can be anything about other than queerness.
Right. Yeah, I was also having, like, a tough time, like, figuring out, like, like, it's in the South, and, like, I'm pretty, like, cooking is not, like, a thing that was attached to the South, like, after 2000. You know, like I think, like, this universe that, like, Eddie and his friends are living in, like, I don't, like, it's kind of shocking that, like, somehow cooking is, like, I don't know, not a thing yet or whatever, or it is, like, not a part of, like, the kind of cultural, like, landscape of, like, the South or something. And also, like, the school itself seemed incredibly, like, wealthy and like well funded. Like the home ec room was. We were freaking out when we watched.
It has its own building. It's its own building.
It's its own building, and it's its own facility. It's not, like, shared by something or whatever. Like, you know, it's its own building. It's, like, incredibly. It's, like, there's, like, all these, like, beautiful windows and, like,
furnished by Williams-Sonoma.
It literally, like, it looks like one of, like, the flagship stores. Like, it's this beautiful space, and
it's almost like this high school is dedicated to cooking, and, like, you have to compete to get into this home ec program.
Right. And so it's shocking that, like, I don't know, and I also. It's shocking that, like, cooking is just, like, it's like this, like, weird kind of, like, taboo thing, because I feel like in this school or, like, in this kind of, like, community that seems pretty wealthy, and I feel like these kinds of programs, or I feel like it's not just, like, cooking that is celebrated. I feel like this definitely extends to other mediums and other things. Like, I feel like the arts in general would be something, like, I think if we looked at, like, their theater, I feel like that would be huge. Like, yeah, I feel like the way that, like, this city in particular treats the arts would be kind of supportive. So I'm, like, really I was really confused by, like, the way that, like, the kind of, like, response to Eddie's cooking and, like, desire to cook, because it seemed like this town was, like, already, like, in this kind of, like, economic and, like, social kind of, like, state of, like, kind of, like, being in this kind of, like, creative economy.
Oh, they're in a renaissance. They're in a renaissance.
Right. And so it seemed really gnarly that, like, this was the kind of response that Eddie was met with. And I mean, and then we were also talking about, like, where is this? Because, like, you know, Eddie was able to, like, you know, run home and to school, but also the cook-off itself was, like, held in their town, you know, like, in this kind of, like, auditorium or something.
Well, time and space are just compressed and compact. It's dilated. Right. There is nothing separating boundaries. Everything's within walking distance.
Literally everything. It's so shocking because Eddie is somehow, like, able to look at the kind of, like, cooking kind of, like, the kind of the cook-off kind of competition space, and, like, you still make it back to the baseball game, like, in, like, a comfortable amount of time. But yeah, so I'm just, like, really curious, like, why cooking is met with the response that it is. If, like, the city and the school are there's, like, no problem hosting this event and, like, facilitating this, you know, like, like, the crowd was full, so obviously, like, I don't know, maybe it's just because it was Bobby Flay or something, but, like,
I'd show up for Bobby Flay.
And, like, of course. But, like, I'm just, like, kind of curious as to why, like, you know, like, it seemed maybe it was just a case of them coming from the 8th grade to high school or something, and maybe, like, their, you know, grade school wasn't, I'm trying to figure out, like, why this was such a shock. I mean, of course, we've talked about, like, why it's a shock and, like, you know, how it's discussed and, like, what it's associated with. But yeah, I just, like, thinking about, like, the universe of the movie and the kind of, like, world that they all exist in, I'm kind of just, like, alarmed that, like, something like cooking was something that was forbidden, because it seemed like lots of other things that maybe would have been considered feminine, were probably incredibly, like, well funded.
Wait, I also just had a moment of clarity. So they're in high school, apparently, according to the Wikipedia synopsis.
Right.
Why is the baseball team run like a little league team then? Why is Why is Eddie not playing for the high school team? Why is he playing for his father's podunk team? Like, I don't understand.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like, the age and the grade is, like, super muddy. Like, I don't know where they are. Like, I don't know. Yeah, unless this is like a weird, like, traveling kind of like.
I mean, it all has to be metaphor. Like the baseball team is his father's. Like, it is like the realm of his father, where he succeeds in the eye of his father. And like, he enjoys it. He enjoys pleasing his father. He enjoys being the best. Like, Eddie loves to be the best. And there's like a point where Eddie is. There's a couple of beautiful montages in this film, set to the most alarming music ever.
So shocking.
One to the dulcet tones of like some unknown country singer, female, and then the other the dulcet tones of unknown country song, male. And females played over the cooking montages where Eddie is like delving into lots of eggs and just like learning the joy of it. And male country is sad. Eddie chose baseball over cooking at this point in the movie, due to the fact that Eddie comes into the baseball field late and they're at a game. I think he's like, they're maybe 3 innings in, and he's like, all right, I'm up. Like, he just waltzes in, puts on the baseball helmet, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna knock this out of the park. It's a fucking 9-to-5 job. And his dad really lays the hammer down, and he says, you're late, you can't play. And I cheered because, yes, responsibility, personal responsibility. And I'll refer back to what Eddie's home ec teacher said to him: your days of self-indulgent creativity are over. So, love that. Screamed when she said it. Eddie was just being taught all these lessons, learning nothing. But he comes to the field late. He sits out. Realizes he can't like please his father in this instance, and his father has complete control like on this field. Where his father lacks control is within the cooking realm. So if we're talking about like this kind of headspace of like nothing really fucking makes sense, why are they playing on a little league team while they're in high school? Why is everything 5 minutes away from each other? This movie's just one giant metaphor. Then we're not even based in reality. Bobby Flay is the fairy godmother that allows him to embrace his queerness and be the cook that he always wanted to be. So I can't really reconcile this movie with reality if we're going to look at it through that kind of lens. That's true.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm also interested in talking about, of course, like the kind of like the third act of the film, which is like so this kind of like shows up late and whatever, and actually goes to like decides to. Well, I'm sorry. Wait. How does this happen? I forget. Wait. How does he make the decision to leave the baseball game?
Oh, okay. So Eddie's friend, the supportive one, just the really supportive friend who doesn't mind that Eddie cooks and plays baseball, like just a true ass friend, is watching the cook-off through like a portable TV, which looks like a Mac desktop. And
from like the 80s, yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Early 90s, yeah.
No, early 2000s, honey. Like, wait. I know you were barely cognizant, but I definitely recognize that Mac. Mac had this like line of desktop computers that had it's very Boz. It had these
it's
like
so wonderful.
Kind of lucite backings that were these really highlighty colors that were like really dreamy. They had like turquoise, like a pink, and I believe a yellow, but basically the monitor looks like that. They're watching it. Bridget's also in the cook-off. She's killing the fucking game. She is just like, she has like 5 sous chefs around her. She's ordering things around. And then Eddie like is just like, he's looking at, he's hearing the cook-off. I'm also am probably like entirely misremembering this. But, no. I got it. Okay, so they're all watching it. DB then, the unsupportive friend, like, sees the cook-off. He really just like realizes, hey, I'm just gonna let Eddie be queer, and maybe one day I'll allow myself to be queer, but right now let's put all the focus on Eddie. So he then kind of shames Eddie and says, we don't need you, we can stand as a team without you. We don't need you as a star. And so the only way, which is perfectly fucking act, because the only way that this friend can access his kind of like sensitivity, his emotional sensitivity, is through anger.
And, like, it's gnarly. Yeah,
and through violence. And so he basically just like shames Eddie with a smile, and then Eddie goes off running to the cook-off. So that's how he gets to the third act.
Right. Okay, perfect. There it is. Okay, and so at this point, once Eddie arrives at the kind of like competition room, kind of like stadium or amphitheater or whatever, not amphitheater, this kind of like auditorium.
The land of empathy. I love it. It is an auditorium of empathy. It totally is.
Right, yeah. And he arrives with, I believe, like an hour left, and like an hour left on the clock. And so he quickly, it's like this beautiful moment of like editing where like, you know, he like dives into the kind of, he starts like grabbing like tools and cooking utensils and like ingredients, starts like throwing things together. And like while that's happening, the editing, it's like juxtaposing like the game that's also happening and like they're, you know, killing it because like they finally have like believe in themselves and they're not like relying on Eddie anymore. And yeah, so he's like grabbing like tongs and then it like cuts to like the baseball like teammates like grabbing like the baseball bat like off the rack, and so it's like this like beautiful moment of
lovely
like,
juxtaposition.
It was so good. It was so wonderful. Like he grabs an oven mitt and then someone puts on the baseball mitt. It was gorgeous. It was amazing. Incredible filmmaking. Themes. It was so wonderful. And so Eddie like starts cooking, and then we kind of go back to the kind of the dugout, and they're watching it on the kind of this like weird TV. And Eddie's not doing so hot. Like the pie that he ends up making is like flat and burnt.
It was a pie?
It was a pie or like a something.
I swear to God, it was a souffle.
Oh, maybe it's a souffle. Yeah, there it is. Probably.
Which is very queer.
So queer. Oh my God, I totally forgot that cooking is a thing in High School Musical as well. Oh my God, okay, never mind. Yeah, so we see that Eddie's not doing so well, and the dad is overhearing his friends kind of like freak out about Eddie's results. And I think the dad has this like, no, I'm sorry, whoa, wait, before we probably continue, backtrack. As Eddie is deciding to leave the baseball game, he's like, heading out, and then his mom quickly jumps from like the stands and goes, "You'll get there much quicker if I drive you." So mind you, the mom is like so down with this and was so quick to just like leave this the championship game.
She wants that scholarship money.
Yeah, she wants that scholarship money. And like it was so wonderful because like the blocking of that moment. So like Eddie and the mom kind of like meet up in the center of the frame, and they kind of like leave out of the frame, and then it's like the dad kind of just like in confusion, like behind them, like in the background, while they were like kind of like in the foreground, and he was just like so kind of like alienated by like this kind of relationship. It was wonderful.
Left behind by progress.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was so wonderful. And so they're there. He's cooking, not doing so hot. And then the dad's hearing this, and I think at one point the dad's tactic of leaving was not just to leave, but to like get kicked out of the game by like shouting at the umpire, which I guess is like, you know, frowned upon and against the rules or something. And so he like does that, gets kicked out of the game, and drives to the cook-off to help Eddie. And so he shows up, surprises Eddie, and there's like 15, or maybe there's like 30 minutes left on the clock or something like that. And the dad says something along the lines of, you know, this is clearly something that you're incredibly passionate about, and I figured that you could show me why or something. So the cook-off ends up becoming like this moment where like Eddie and his dad get to bond or something, and like he like comes to like this realization that he's like been an asshole or something. And I know that you had a problem with how Eddie finished just in time. So if you want to talk about
Yes, I would love to. Okay, so keep in mind, my favorite line of this movie, I've said it before, your days of self-indulgent creativity are over. Okay. So I get it. Eddie's good at things. He's a wonderkind. I mean, it's kind of, right. I think it's kind of easy to be a wonderkind when you're 15. Things aren't that challenging. So I just, so the whole, like, crux of this cook-off, I guess it's like a pre-chopped kind of universe, but, like, they're instilling these rules where you have to use lemon in one of the dishes. And so Eddie's cooking. Bridget, like, has made her dish. She has, like, plenty of time left. Like, the lemon is fully present. Like, I don't remember what the dish was, but I remember those 6 thick-ass slices of lemon on her plate.
Yeah.
Looked like they were fully integrated in the meal, something that she had considered. So, Eddie, who, let's keep in mind, shows up late and somehow manages to compose a full meal that he's very confident about. There's seconds left on the clock, probably 20. He then fucking recognizes that he has not put any lemon in his dish.
Right.
This is a key rule. This is something that you need in order to win. Eddie hasn't considered it. He remembers it with 15, 20 seconds left. He grabs a lemon. No, well, I think the dad tosses him a lemon in some kind of baseball-like allegory or something.
Kind of,
He catches it, and I wish he dropped it. That would have been so great. But he grabs a lemon, grabs a grater, and grates the lemon over his plate. Now, I have a lot of problems with this. You can't just fucking grate a lemon over any dish and expect it to meld well. Like, unless he okay, like, let's think about this. Maybe he was considering the lemon and, like, just was like, oh, you know, grating the lemon is the last thing I can do. But no. He looks like he completely forgot to add a key component to this and grates the lemon over and expects to fucking win? No. Like, thank God he doesn't win. I was clapping when he didn't win and Bridget won, because Bridget, like, really did dedicate herself to this craft. This was something that Eddie definitely loves and is passionate about, but was completely torn throughout the movie on, like, what to pay attention to. And it makes sense that he lost. He showed up an hour late. He fucking forgot the lemon, and then he loses, and he is fucking crestfallen.
It's so.
Do you think he was expecting to win?
I think so. I think that's something we talked about, like, when that kind of scene happened, and when Bridget was announced as the winner. Is just like he, like, throughout most of his life, presumably has been this, like, star, you know, baseball player who, of course, can, you know, just walk onto the field and, like, hit a home run. Like, that's like a guarantee. And so I think, like, there was like, definitely, like, a confidence, or a kind of, like, he felt like this was kind of, like, in the bag, because he has, like, this, like, you know, passion, creativity, or whatever, that, you know, Bridget, I guess, like, doesn't have, or something.
Bridget has it. I remember when the home ec teacher, like, comes to the house to convince the parents to, like, let Eddie come to the competition. Like, you know, like, she's saying, like, Eddie just has, like, the drive, or actually, like, even, like, a one-on-one conversation that Eddie and the home ec teacher have is just like, you know, like, Bridget can, you know, chop mince and whatever for days, but, like, you got it. Like, it's like this, like, weird thing where, like, Bridget is, like, because like, her passion is, like, like, I don't know, like, because she likes, she's meticulous.
She's meticulous, and she has, like, a process.
Yeah,
and, like, you know,
it's like this kind of, like, I guess the home ec teacher and everyone else in Eddie's world believes, like, genius is unbridled, it's messy, it's something that's, like, unplanned, where, like, Bridget demonstrates this very kind of, like, carefully constructed, meticulous attention to her craft, and therefore she is not passionate, which is fucking wrong, first of all. And it's funny because it also, like, she wins in the end because of her meticulous craft, because she pays so much attention to it, and Eddie loses. So what are we really learning here?
Exactly. I'm also interested if you think that, like, this, you know, alongside, you know, a kind of way of thinking about genius, and, like, what is genius, and, like, what kinds of genius should be, like, rewarded. Like, what do you think Bridget's role is in this movie, in the kind of frame of, like, Eddie navigating his sexuality? Like, do you think that, like, who Bridget is as a character and as, like, this kind of competitor, or as this kind of, like, person that he's going up against has any kind of thing? Or do you think it's just maybe there to kind of think about genius and...
Well, that's... You know... Well, here's the thing. I don't know, because I said earlier that I kind of had a problem with the way Eddie is bolstered by the women in this, and I think it definitely is, like, clear within Bridget, and how Bridget is kind of viewed as this, like, stick up the ass kind of, like, crazy bitch who is just, like, existing in the kitchen as some kind of, like, this is what you shouldn't be kind of thing. You shouldn't be this driven. You shouldn't be mean. And Bridget's not even, like, really that mean. I mean, she's a little, like, cunty sometimes, but everyone throws I mean, like, but I love that. Like, everyone, like, kind of throws it to her, so why shouldn't she throw it back? So, but, like, she's not, like, a nice person. Like, she's not nice. She only has time for her craft, and she's not going to be nice to get it. And she wins, and that's fucking a victory. But the way that, like, everyone kind of treats her as this kind of, like, way not to be. And I think like for Eddie and this kind of like idea of queerness, I think there's like this kind of misogyny present in it. Like there's this kind of like, I mean, I said earlier that Eddie has like problems like grappling with femme, but like Bridget as this like kind of like femme opposition, and she's not even celebrated. Like, it's like this kind of like, if you are stuck within this like role of femme, you're not going to be celebrated for it. Like, you may be a man in the kitchen and you're doing something femme, but you're still a man. And like this, it just kind of like reflected to me the way that like the focus in any kind of like queer, like let's say like a political like visibility is always focused on the gay man. And it's like never focused on any kind of like aspect of like I just like femme is really absent within this kind of like political like view. And I think so. Okay, Eddie's within this like kind of femscape of cooking. And I think Eddie is kind of bolstered and like supported because like it's a man in this world, and for some reason that's like especially celebrated. Whereas like women who have been like kind of like relegated to this world, like culturally, sometimes not through choice, but in Bridget's case, like through her choice. And she isn't celebrated for her choice, but Eddie is definitely celebrated for his choice to enter this world. So I think that's like where like I kind of see this kind of like misogyny within the people around Eddie, like, and supporting him and like kind of only focusing on him as this golden god and like excelling within like a femscape. And like I just like
gotcha.
I mean, we also have to like consider, is cooking femme like through like the cultural like kind like we've bounced around with like, is creativity femme? And like in this world it definitely fucking is. But like at its core, do we gender these kinds of activities, roles, like thought processes? Like I just like I don't know. What do you think?
Right. No, yeah. I'm I wish I kind of had kind of more of an understanding of like how this transition kind of happens, because right, like we talked about how like kind of like before, you know, one considers pursuing cooking as like a kind of professional job, and maybe actually lands the kind of position of like the chef of like a restaurant. Like before that, like there's I think there's like something that happens that is, I think, probably explained relatively easily by like several histories, that like, you know, like somehow like cooking within like kind of like the domestic space is like incredibly gendered. But of course, like once we move into the more like professional realm, like of course that is like a space that is like dominated by men. And so I'm wondering, like, how, like, what is the kind of transition there? Like, how, like, why does that shift? Like, why, like, how do people that think about cooking as femme reconcile with, like, you know, Bobby Flay's fame or something? Like, how are they, like, okay and, like, you know, accepting and like, you know, they're just like very normal, like Bobby Flay being a chef and like having his own show or whatever, seems to be, at least, especially like on our universe and also in Eddie's universe, this very like normalized thing. And so I'm wondering also just like both in this universe and in ours, like, you know, like how, like where is the kind of point where those two things are like switch, like these like or at least like the or gendered associations kind of like
No, I totally you're totally fucking spot on, because like the dad really only comes to terms with Eddie's cooking when it's through a competitive format and like it's televised.
Right.
Like that's the breakthrough. Like he doesn't give a fuck when he's doing it in the kitchen, but like or in home ec class, which are these like domestic spaces that are usually assigned to femme. But like when there's like glory attached to it, like that's when he kind of transitions. Right. And it's like, how can I help you achieve this glory? Like it's kind of like any kind of like breakthrough, like any kind of creative person who like through either like gender, race, or like queerness, like as a breakthrough, like someone who can reach like a mass audience, like, and that's where they kind of like stop being whatever they are and become like a figure, like who happens to be that.
Gotcha.
Like that transition. Right. So I think that's what happened with the dad at least.
Interesting. I mean, that also kind of repositions the dad's, you know, move to kind of like at the last minute help Eddie out in the competition. I think that like repositions it into like intentions of like wanting to like claim some type of like to like share this glory and to kind of like share like responsibility for this, that like, you know, to kind of mark his presence in this kind of in this winning, if he was to win. I think like that, right. So I think there's definitely something else happening there that the dad is doing.
Well, his job is Eddie.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't go to work.
Right.
His job is focusing on Eddie and like bolstering his like baseball success. Like, everyone is focused on this fucking kid. I can't get over it.
But I think also, speaking about the kind of final sequence of like the winning or rather the losing and the winning, because they ended up the team, the Groundhogs, ended up winning the game, but Eddie ends up losing the cook-off. And it's like this moment where like the baseball team like runs into the auditorium because everything's in 5 minutes of each other, and they have like the trophy, and they're like, "Where's Eddie?" And they're like, "Did he win?" And then they like, it was so gnarly. It was so, oh my god. And so they run in and they like find Eddie. And then, like, you know, Eddie's, like, of course, like, in tears because, you know, he didn't win. And they're like, "Eddie, like, did you win?" He's like, "No, I didn't. Like, Bridget won, whatever." And then, like, I love the supportive friend who's played by the iconic Orlando Bloom of That's So Raven.
Also named Eddie?
Did I say Orlando Bloom?
You definitely said Orlando Bloom.
I said Orlando Bloom. I totally meant Orlando Brown.
I mean,
oh my god. Yeah. I mean, hey,
could be twins.
Whatever.
Could be twins.
Could be twins. Yeah.
Wait, are they? Is Eddie? Wait. Is Orlando Bloom's character in That's So Raven named Eddie? Yeah.
Oh my god.
How about that?
Oh my god. Hey. How about that?
Okay, but what is Orlando Bloom's character?
And that's why you're the philosopher. So Orlando Bloom is, what am I saying? Orlando Brown. Oh my god. Okay. Orlando
so
Brown, like so dreamy. Like arrives and is like visibly like pissed that like Eddie didn't win. And approaches, which is interesting. I'm really into this decision that like it was this kind of private conversation between
Bobby Flay.
What's his name?
And Orlando Bloom.
Bobby Flay. No, but what's Orlando Bloom? Well, yeah. I love that it was a private conversation between Orlando Bloom's character and Bobby Flay, and kind of like Eddie kind of didn't get this like moment of like closure with Bobby Flay in this kind of like moment of loss. And it was Orlando Brown's character and Bobby Flay, and Orlando Brown goes up to Bobby Flay and is like, why isn't, you know, Eddie's name up on the marquee? Like Eddie, you know, probably like smoked like all these other people or whatever. And then Bobby Flay like turns like has Orlando Brown's character point to Eddie and is like, "Look at him. Like, does he seem like a loser to you? That looks like a winner to me." And it's like, and it turns and it's like Eddie, like, you know, all of his friends supporting him even though he's lost or something. And then Orlando Brown's character is like, "Yeah, I guess you're right." And then they kind of like part ways, and like, you know, that's the last that we see of Bobby Flay. So yeah, I'm interested in what does that kind of like sequence mark? Is that like the kind of moment of like, you know, he came out and everyone's like finally okay with it, or like, but I'm also interested like on your thoughts on like this kind of like Orlando Brown's character having this moment with Bobby Flay and not Eddie. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I think Eddie would have demanded a better fucking answer than that. But
right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I was actually kind of confused because I was like, yeah, it's very Disney to be like, you didn't win the competition, but you won in the fact that you're supported by loved ones. But I couldn't really quite grasp it because I was just so fucking angry that no one was celebrating Bridget.
Right. Yeah.
And,
literally no one. Yeah.
They just, like, Eddie was celebrated for making his choice, and I guess having the courage to kind of show up to the competition, albeit an hour fucking late. But he finally allowed himself to exist within this realm, which I guess is what he was being celebrated for. Which, you know. Well, do we, like, it's this idea of, like, celebrating someone for having courage to exist as a queer person in this world. Like, the act of coming out, the act of being public, which, I mean, who fucking knows? I mean, obviously it takes a lot of courage to express yourself in a environment that is totally against who you are as a person, and like kind of like living whatever identity it is that you are. So I understand like the courage attached to that, but like it's just like, let's also focus on the fact that like Eddie is like a young white privileged male, and like this is totally the narrative that is celebrated within contemporary queer culture, although changing now. But for a long time, the gay white male is this person who is like solely celebrated for coming out and having that courage. So it was like, that's what I viewed it as, is like this kind of like contemporary juxtaposition with how that narrative is like presented throughout, and which is why I have no fucking time for Eddie. I really don't. Like he has like such an incredible support system, and he's good at everything, and like the moment where he cries is just so wonderful for me. Like, wow, gods can fall, and like that's great. And,
gods can fall.
And like, and like when your privilege is taken away from you in such a fucking soul shattering moment, that is sexy as hell. Like that is so good. Like, I mean,
that's what I meant too.
I mean, I love I really do love this movie. I think it's a very sweet movie. Like, I identify with it on several levels. But like, as far as Eddie's journey, I was never really like invested in whether he like won or not, because he already won through his like circumstance. Like, it was just like there was nothing really like to lose, honestly. Other than like maybe the respect of his father, but who gives a fuck, because that dude sucks. Like, so like, I mean, what did you think of the ending? Like, were you like super like supportive of this? Like, what's up?
I think that I was definitely more. I'm like rewatching it. I found myself really like indifferent to Eddie in particular, like individually as a character, and like his kind of character arc. I mean, like it was nice to kind of see him fall and feel what it is to fall and to kind of like hit, the floor. Like that was nice to kind of witness and to like allow that to happen in such like a really wonderful scene. But I rewatching it, I was just like there was so many other like really, of course, like overt kind of political messages that I think the writers of this movie were definitely trying to push. And I was really more interested in and saddened by how those things were not played out or worked out in any way. Like Eddie's narrative like really occupied, of course, the entire film. But like there were so many times where like these conversations, these really like important conversations that really, I think, pointed to like the kind of structural issues that the dad has either in the relationship that he has with the players on the Groundhogs, or even like his wife and like Eddie. Like these, like there were like these like really intense conversations where like the teammates would be like, "Why do you say that like I run like a girl? Like I am a girl," which is an amazing scene.
But it's not.
Or it's like,
no, like you're right. Like they have that moment, and then they completely fucking undercut it.
Right. Yeah. Then Eddie shows up and then is like, "Hey, what I miss?" And then like that, and like this kind of like revolution that's like happening is completely just like invalidated and just like
through his presence.
Aside. And so yeah, exactly. And then also there was this like, really important kind of very short, of course, because Eddie shows up, dialogue between the wife, like his mom and the dad, where, the dad is like having this, of course, like classic, like homophobic dad kind of like crisis or something. That's like, I don't even know him anymore. It's like he's not even telling me things. And the mom is like, is he like not telling you? Like it's something along the lines of like he's like, is he not telling you things, or are you just not like hearing things that you want to hear or something? And that was like so interesting. And then of course like Eddie pops up in the background and is like, "Hey guys, like what I miss?" And I'm like, no, like this is like these like really important things to talk about. Like the teammates are like roasting this dad like all together, like about his like fucked up misogyny and like homophobia. And like, the mom is like really kind of like about to like give it to him about like how he needs to really kind of like rethink how the fuck he's approaching this like whole situation, and then that's just completely just like not given any space. And so I think like rewatching it, I definitely was like incredibly like less interested in what happened to Eddie so much as I was what happened to the kind of environment around him. Like, did these people end up coming to some type of conclusion or arrive at like an awareness about like where they're fucking up and how they're fucking up? Like, where is the friend, the kind of like self-hating like homophobe friend that like was never supportive of Eddie, I guess kind of until the end? Like, where did he end up? I'm curious about that. Like, how, like, what was the dad's journey? Like, I was like really curious about like the kind of conditions that Eddie was living in, not so much Eddie himself. Where these people ended up is like where I kind of, I think that was kind of like my lasting, but the kind of, I guess like since like watching it since I was little. I think those are the kind of the thoughts I was having after watching it again. Yeah.
So let's. So we're gonna look up theory. We didn't. But there's. I think like one of the best things that while researching this movie and how we were going to present it, you suggested an article that wasn't actually an article, and it was called "Fatherhood in the Kitchen," and I was searching for it for at least 20 minutes until I asked you, what text is this from? And you said that you had made it up entirely.
It's not a real thing.
So, yeah. I don't know. I do like the movie. I do.
Yeah.
And I liked that I could confront some issues I have with the way queer politics are kind of disseminated, like at least through mass media. So that was fun.
Right.
But what would you like? What kind of final thoughts would you say? Is this actually interesting, or are we just making it interesting?
I think probably a little bit of both. I think that it's a Disney Channel movie, and I think this is like also like such a difficult like thing to kind of, I don't know, gauge exactly like what it's doing, because I'm actually looking it up, and there actually hasn't been like, there isn't like, you know, like a boring kind of like BuzzFeed article even about this, about like how aggressive the themes are in this movie. Like, I think we are definitely doing something in this kind of reading and like critique of it for sure. But I also think that like our critique, of course, isn't coming from nowhere. Like, these are very like abrasive and like overt things that are said in the movie and like ideas that are brought up. So I think that I think it is an interesting movie, and I think it is an interesting movie for Disney to create or to kind of produce in the time that it did, like circa 2003. So this was like before, you know, I mean, obviously not the same kind of like cultural like gravity, but this was like pre Brokeback Mountain, and so like I think like for this kind of like very this movie that is like meant for children to kind of be so overt with like these kinds of topics is like really, I think that's interesting.
Boz, let me stop. I have breaking news. Okay, so I was doing research on the four writers of this film. And I found one, Mr. Rick Bitzelberger, and his previous credits were quite striking. One, he wrote 10 episodes of Undressed. Do you know that series?
No.
Okay, so it was this MTV series that was like somewhat softcore porn, but like it was usually was like college aged individuals, and it was all about sex. Like every episode was about sex. And two of the ones that he wrote were He Ain't Gay, He's My Brother, and Bygones, spelled B-I-gones.
Wow.
So,
no way.
Gay themes abound, and also the other credits he has are for a TV series which I have no fucking recollection of, called Erotic Confessions.
Interesting.
such teleplays as,
oh my god,
Judy and the Beast, Virtual Vixen, Trapped, Arresting Developments, Model Situation, Friends and Lovers, Coming Clean, and Chalk It Up.
Wow.
So there is sex all over this film, and now we know who's responsible. It's Mr. Blitzberger.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's definitely something to consider, is that like is this kind of has like these kinds of sensibilities, with like storytelling. So I wouldn't be shocked if he, somehow finessed that into this plot, which I mean, I think that he has. Like, I think that's like not really like a question.
There's some kind of subconscious desire being put into this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I would definitely recommend it. I think that it's like definitely like a good watch. It's also incredibly like fun to watch. The editing is very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like juxtaposing it to like where we are now, with regards to like representations of like queer narratives or like movies with gay themes or queer themes. I think it's interesting. I don't know. I think that it was definitely a shocking film for 2003. I don't know. I think it was maybe also, it's of course important to repeat that like it was a shocking movie for 2003 for Disney Channel.
Right.
So yeah, I would definitely recommend it as like somebody who's like trying to give somebody like the ABCs of like like visibility and hypervisibility and being public with like one's true self. Yeah. Your final thoughts, I guess, if you already...
I mean, I enjoy the movie, honestly. It's entertaining. I didn't look at my phone once. Actually thinking about... You brought up a good point about the fact that it was in 2003, because I was a little more conscious of the world around me at this point than you were. So, well, maybe not. Who knows? You're so intelligent. You could have been much more present than I was. But this is a post 9/11 Bush era movie, and I do remember the climate being pretty especially after 9/11, violently racist and homophobic. So the fact that this exists is actually kind of incredible, and it actually only could exist as it is because of the themes being so kind of allegorical, rather than like on its face. Like, I mean, the day that Disney has like an openly gay character in a Disney Channel original movie is the day we are both going to spend 10 episodes dissecting that.
Oh, absolutely.
But I mean, like, it's pretty interesting. I mean, childhood sexuality, like in any kind of form, can really only be kind of investigated like in America through allegory. So I think this does a pretty interesting job of doing it. Conflating cooking with like queer desire of any kind, because like honestly, like Eddie watching Bobby Flay on that TV was like me seeing my football teammate like unzip his pants and like whip his dick around like a helicopter in the locker room. So I mean, like the visual like spectacle of this is totally this kind of sexual awakening for Eddie.
Absolutely.
So I don't know, I enjoy it. I definitely have problems with it. I kind of like hate Eddie. I mean, he's like nothing. He's just like this like prototypical like nice white guy that gets everything. Like he doesn't work for anything. I mean, he does like this like montage with the home ec teacher, but only because he's fucking forced to. And like I don't know. It's just like, I mean, Eddie sucks. Love the movie.
Eddie sucks. The dad sucks. Mom rocks. I love.
I don't know. I would definitely recommend anyone watching it just because fucking it's enjoyable. Totally. And I don't know. Like, I love looking for things that are there and things that aren't there, and I think there's a lot that is there. So I'm down for Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off. Not down for Eddie.
Not down for Eddie. I'm giving it 4.2. That's a little too high. No, I think maybe just like a solid 4, like a low 4
out of 5.
Yeah, like 4 spatulas, queer spatulas, iridescent spatulas out of 5.
I give it 11 eggs out of a dozen. Well, maybe 10. Yeah, 10 eggs out of a dozen.
That sounds good. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So I guess we haven't figured out our next movie to watch, but I
thought we were doing Descendants.
Oh, there it is. Yes, Descendants is next. Yes. And I think like a fun way to maybe like listen to this podcast is to watch maybe the movie ahead of time, and so you can kind of like actually engage with like what we're saying.
And we should probably put that at the beginning.
True, yeah. Not just like jump into the movie. Yeah. And if you aren't familiar with Descendants, that is the not the latest, but like one of the kind of Disney Channel movies, musicals that Disney Channel has been kind of championing as its kind of like new like High School Musical, because it is directed by Kenny Ortega and has all of these kinds of like new, fresh, like attractive faces or something.
Is Kenny Ortega like a name?
Kenny Ortega is the name. He is like, right, so he directed all the High School Musicals, but he's also directed all the Cheetah Girls movies. He was also the choreographer for Dirty Dancing.
Oh my God.
Shocking. The
unsung auteur. Oh my God.
Right? And also the director of Michael Jackson's This Is It tour.
Shut the fuck up.
That, of course, never happened. So that is who Kenny Ortega is. Wow. And so it was like this big moment that he's returned to direct another musical. So that will be what we will be watching next time on this podcast.
Looking forward to it.
All right.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Pop Gaze. Our theme music is made by Ari Eccles. You can follow us on Instagram at PopGazePodcast or email us at popgazepodcast@gmail.com. If you like the podcast, please subscribe. If you don't like us, subscribe anyway and indulge your negativity. Next week we'll be dipping into Descendants. See you then.